In this lesson, and this is the last lesson of the chapter, we're going to spend just a few minutes looking at debugging and some of the debugging tools that are available in Eclipse. So what I've done is I've written a program that computes the square root of a number using Newton's method of successive approximations. So I've written it in a very functional style with several functions to do all of the work. We have a square function that squares a number. We have an average function that returns the average of two numbers. We have an improve function that takes two numbers and gets their average. That improves our guess. That's what we're working with. Then we have a function called good enough to see if a particular guess falls within a certain range of precision. And then finally we have the square root function itself, which calls itself recursively until the guess falls within the precision range that we specify. So if you look down at main, you see that we provide a precision of 0.001, and then we try to find the square root of 9. So when we run this, we get the result 3.000915, so on and so forth. So if we want to debug the program, it's not even so much debugging that I want to describe. It's if we want to watch the progress of the program and be able to look and see what's happening as the program runs. What we can do is, under run, we can say debug as Java application. So let's do that. Now, these errors are not really in the program. They're from a previous version. So we're just going to click proceed here. So running as debug still gives us the same answer. So what we want to do is we want to do that again. But this time, before we do it, we want to toggle a breakpoint. And toggling a breakpoint will allow the program to slow down so we can use what's called a stepper to step through the program. So we picked our breakpoint to be at the beginning of square root. If we would choose something different, we can highlight the line, come back up to run, and click toggle breakpoint there. To do that, though, we might want to clear all the breakpoints, remove breakpoint, and then select the one we want. I want to select this particular line so that we can look at the guess as we go through our program. So we're going to toggle that breakpoint. So notice there's a blue circle indicating that we have a breakpoint on this line. So now let's debug. And so what happens is the program begins its launch. It tells us that it's going to launch in what it calls a debug perspective. We say yes. Notice the window changes we have. And notice that we have here in the top right a window that shows our variable values. Now if we come down into the program, we can put our cursor on the variables to see what our different variables are. X is 9. The precision we already know. It's listed up here in the window, but we can also put our cursor on the variable to see the value. And then our current guess is 1.0, which we selected. So what we want to do is we want to step through the program. So we can do that by pressing the F5 key. And the F5 key takes us into the next part of the program. So now it's taking us to the improve method because that's what was called next. Because the next line was to improve our guess and get a new value for guess. So we click F5 again, or press F5. It takes us to the average function. The average function adds x and y together, divides by 2. That takes us back to improve. Improve now returns its value to guess. So if I step past guess, now the guess is 5.0. So then the next line tells us to call the program recursively. So we call it again. Notice we go back into square root. We'll step in. Notice at this point, guess comes up into our variable window because we've modified the initial value of guess. So guess was 1.0. Now that it's been modified, its value appears in the window. So we can step through it again. First thing that happens is we square x. Now we're going to check the precision. We're going to get a new version for guess. So we go through this whole process again. I'll move a little bit faster now. Now we have a new value for guess. It's 3.4. Now we have our new version of guess in the watch window. We go back into good enough, goes back to square. We make a new improve on guess, and now guess's value is 3.02. So as you can see, we're working our way down to 3.000. Let's step through it one or two more times. I'll go a little bit faster. Here we go back into improve. Improve calls average. Now the guess is about where we're going to end up. So now we return guess. We go through the recursive call a couple more times, then we finally break out. And now we're at the last line of the program. And notice we hit F5 and our results show up in the console. So a lot of times when you're working on a program, stepping through the program will help you figure out why you're not getting the result that you expect. And by closely watching the line-by-line progress of the program and keeping track of the variable values along the way, it will help you determine what problem there is in the program and be able to fix it. Another good use of stepping through a program is to learn how your program operates. So for example, when I'm teaching beginning programming classes, I have my students step through a for loop or a while loop or a series of if-else-if statements. And by following the control flow, you can learn quite a bit about not only how this particular program is operating, but how the program construct you're looking at operates in general. So that's a brief overview of debugging in the Eclipse IDE. As with all the other features of Eclipse, there's much more to debugging than what I've shown you here, but we could have a whole course just on debugging in Eclipse, and we don't have time for that. So hopefully you've gotten a good taste for the Eclipse IDE, and I encourage you to begin using an IDE even if it's not Eclipse. You should look at maybe several different environments. Do a Google search for Java IDEs to get an idea of the different ones that are available. There are several in the academic environment that are not quite as feature-packed as Eclipse is that you might find easier to use to start with. But Eclipse is one of the more popular IDEs, so I wanted to give you an overview of how it works as a general introduction to Java IDEs. So with that, we're finished with this lesson, and that wraps up this chapter on the Eclipse IDE.